If you want a really, really good movie that is going to stay with you and might just mess you up a little bit, then Resurrection is probably for you. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. Today I'm talking about Resurrection, which is coming to theaters on July 29th, 2022. It is a new horror slash thriller film starring Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth that it's just very, very strange, but it's so good. So my hot take is I actually think you should watch it. Now look, this would normally be a movie where I would be like, it's a little too weird, but you know what? I didn't mind it and I really loved a lot about it. I loved the leads, I loved the tension, and I loved the overall mystery. So I actually think you should watch it, but with the caveat that it is a very strange movie and it deals with some sensitive subject matter. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happens in this film, turn off at the ending section. And there are a lot of surprises in this movie. There's a lot of strange turns, so you might not want to know. I'm going to touch on the ending briefly. I'm not going to go super in depth, but I will tell you about the ending. So if you don't want to know, turn it off when I get there. You can watch up until that point, though. I'll keep it vague up until that point. So in Resurrection, you have Margaret, who has kind of her life in order. She's managing her busy career with her home life, raising her daughter. She is kind of doing it all, kind of staying on top of everything. But that all starts to unravel when someone from her past comes back into her life. Things I liked about this movie. The first, the music. The music is really phenomenal in this movie. I mean, this film is a thriller. It's a horror movie, but it has a lot of thriller aspects, and that means there's a lot of tension. And the music is just, it's strange enough and it is odd enough that it just keeps you on edge. It really helps to contribute to the overall feeling. And you kind of need that in this movie because this is a movie that is really like a psychological thriller where you're really kind of figuring out what is going on with Margaret and how she's going to try to overcome this figure that came from her past and the effect that person is having on her life. So you really need music that keeps you on edge so you kind of just stay unsure of what's going to happen next. And the music is perfect. Second thing I really loved are the leads. I mean, there's not a ton of characters in this movie, but the main characters are Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth, and they both do a fantastic job for very different reasons. I mean, Rebecca Hall, she kind of pulls a lot of this together. Like a lot of it is on her plate. You know, her emotions, her, ordeal that she's going through, how she's going to deal with this person from the past. All of that is basically the meat of the film. And Rebecca Hall spends a lot of time kind of by herself taking the viewer along this journey. And so she does a fantastic job. Look, I love Rebecca Hall. She's a fantastic actor, and it was really great to see her lead up this movie. And then Tim Roth also just does a really good job as well, because his character has to be a little off-putting. Like, well, not a little, very off-putting. He seems calm and nice, but then the things he does are very sinister and very off. And so Tim Roth has to kind of strike that balance, and he does it perfectly. And the way that he approaches that is really a lot of what makes this film so unsettling and so tense. And the last thing I really loved is the mystery. Look, this is a story that is very strange. I'll get into that when we get to the ending, but it is a really strange story. But there's a lot that you don't know about in this film, and you really get a nice slow trickle throughout. Like, you don't know much about what happened and what is going to happen next. The film kind of keeps you in the dark for a lot of it, and I really love that. I really love kind of wondering what will happen next. And the fourth thing I liked is, look, this film is weird. It's very weird. You'll find out more about why it's weird in the ending discussion, but just know that this is a very strange film, but it does deal with some darker emotions and darker subject matter. Things I didn't love as much, and this is just a minor point, the film is very weird. So like, if you're not interested in a weird movie, if you're not interested in kind of a mind trip or some subject matter that might be a little bit questionable, then this might not be for you. But I thought it was a very interesting film. So going into the ending, and look, this is where there will be spoilers. If you don't want to know what happens in the film, turn it off now. So also, content warning. This is probably the first time I've done this, but this film does deal with an abusive relationship, a history of abuse, and I guess kind of a crime to a child. So just be warned. It's a weird movie, and the first time you kind of see that happening, it is very off-putting. So in Resurrection, like I said, you have Rebecca Hall, who plays Margaret. She has everything together. She is, a boss of her company. She is raising her daughter. She has everything under control. But eventually, this person from her past, David, played by Tim Roth, kind of re-enters the picture, and you don't really know why. At first, he just kind of appears where she is, and it's a very slow progression. Eventually, they do talk, and you find out that there's a past. Now, there's a lot of back and forth here. You get some insights into their past relationship. You find out that David was abusive to her. He keeps asking her for kindnesses to prevent him from doing something that she's not going to like. And these kindnesses are very strange, and they range from like walking to work barefoot to, you know, going into like a prayer position in the park every night. Like it gets very strange as she has to do more and more. But there's a good reason for her on why she has to do this, because, and this is where it gets really weird. I mean, it's a very weird movie. This is where it gets really, really weird. You find out that, so David and Rebecca used to be together. They used to be a couple, and they had a son together. And I guess at one point, Rebecca left and came back, and David said that he had eaten their son. Like he had consumed their son and put him in his body, and that their son was living in his body. And he keeps kind of telling Rebecca, like, you know, he keeps kind of using that to force Margaret to do things for him. Like he'll say, you know, your son's crying, like he's wondering where his mom is, why they can't be together, or like, you know, your son is crying, you need to do this kindness, or, you know, I'm gonna hurt him, things like that, like very manipulative, abusive type things. And it gets very, very strange because of that. And like the first time you get an inkling of that there's like some sort of baby involved. I think Rebecca had like a dream where she woke up, and then she like went to, I think, an oven, and she opened it, and there was like a baby, like, you know, a little baby with like burn marks on it in the oven. And then when she touched the baby, it started screaming like very briefly, and then she woke up from this dream. Like that's the kind of weirdness that you have in this movie. It is very, very strange, but that does also contribute to the unsettling aspects of this movie. So as you can imagine, like Margaret, she doesn't believe David, but she does, and she keeps doing things for him because she wants to save her son, and then she also wants to save her daughters. He keeps kind of implying threats on Margaret's daughter, and so in order to kind of save her and save her son, she keeps doing these things that are just crazy for David, and it really leads to a downward spiral because she's doing things that look very, very strange. B, those things are taking a toll on her mental health. And then also her trying to figure out what David's end game is, how she can get out of it. That all takes a toll on her mental health and her life in general. And she starts to unravel. Now, she thinks she's like kind of got everything under control, or at least that she's trying to manage it. But to everyone around her, she looks like she is just kind of unraveling. And especially her daughter. Her daughter is very worried about her because, as you can imagine, Margaret, who thinks that her abusive ex-husband, who literally ate her son, is back in town, is becoming very, very worried about her daughter. And so she becomes very controlling of her daughter and like says, you know, you can't leave unless you tell me, you have to text me every hour, things like that, things that kids who her daughter's like going into college don't want to hear, don't like. All this takes a toll on her life, on her work, and on her relationship with her daughter. And eventually she like confronts David, and, you know, he says, you know, your son is here, he's crying, like, why are you doing this to me? Like, do you want to hear him? And she puts her ear up to his stomach, and you hear like the faintest little cry. And it's a very, very good scene because it's not like super loud. You just hear a very little bit. You almost miss it if you're not listening very, very closely. So that, I guess, in her mind, makes what David is saying real, and then causes her to come to her final plan. So eventually David comes to her work and tells her to come to his hotel so that she can see her son. And so she gets ready, she goes to this dinner, and it's, if it wasn't so sinister, it would be lovely because she gets there, David is dressed up, he has like a dinner set out for her. It would be a lovely scene if there wasn't this kind of underlying abusive aspect and the things that we know about her past. So we also find out some key aspects about their relationship because you know that they had been together. David looks a little older than her, but you know, you don't know that much about their past. But we find out that like David essentially stalked her and like targeted her when she was young and showered affection on her and eventually like convinced her to marry him. Like it was a very predatory type of relationship. She says that, you know, she was a child, that she wasn't ready for this. And David is, you know, trying to justify this by saying, oh, we were in love, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So we find out a little more about the relationship. We find out that this relationship never really started on a good part. And then obviously the having the son and him eating the son was another very bad aspect about this. But eventually David says, like, do you want to feel your son? He's moving, you can feel him move. And so Margaret puts her hand on David's stomach, and then she like reels back in shock, presumably because she felt it move. And this is where the film that was already very weird also becomes kind of like more gory than I expected. So after Margaret feels the baby moving, she says, thank you for bringing my son back. And then she like pulls out a knife that she had taped to her wrist and then slashes David like on the ear. And so David, is shocked, and he tackles her, and then they start fighting. He wrestles the knife away from her, but Margaret has planned ahead, and so she reaches down and pulls out like an ankle knife that she had like duct taped to her foot. And so she stabs David in the side. David stabs her kind of in the back, and they are just kind of like, it's a really tough scene because, like, this is a very, I don't know, realistic is not the right word, but it is a kind of visceral type of fight. It's not like a normal movie fight. Like, they are not doing crazy things. They are just kind of fighting for their lives. And so David's got like a stab wound in his side. Margaret has the knife sticking out of her back, and she starts kind of crawling towards David. David like staggers back. He falls on the bed, and she starts crawling towards him. So David's just kind of like battling on the bed. He's stabbed in the side. He's cut on his face, and Margaret kind of like crawls over, and it looks like maybe she's going to like, it's like a weird scene where it looks like maybe she's gonna like ask for forgiveness, because she comes up to his foot and like hold his foot, and then she pulls out the knife from her back and like cuts his Achilles tendon. And so David like falls over, and Margaret climbs on top of him, and then she kind of eviscerates him. She cuts open his belly, reaches in there, and is like pulling out intestines, and then pulls out a beautiful little baby. And again, this film has so many like aspects where it'd be a beautiful scene if it wasn't so gory. Like, she's holding this beautiful baby, and she like smiles, looks down, and says like, it's good to see you again. And then like the camera pans back, and like Tim Roth is just like eviscerated on the floor. Like, there's blood. It's not like a crazy amount of blood, but there's like blood kind of all over the hotel room. So you have this like beautiful, beautiful scene in this kind of like horrible, horrible situation. So now we fast forward and we see Abbie packing up her room. And this scene is overly bright. Abbie is packing up. It looks like maybe she's going back to college. And so she packs up her stuff, comes into Margaret's room, and you see Margaret holding just a beautiful baby. And then so Abbie comes in, she says like, I'm all packed, and Margaret's looking at the baby. She's like, do you want to hold him? And so she gives Abbie the baby, and Abbie like cradles the baby and says, thanks, mom, and then starts like being really sweet to this little baby. And then as Abbie's holding the baby, she looks at Margaret and says, mom, I just wanted to tell you that I'm not scared anymore. You made everything okay, so I'm not scared. And it's too perfect. Like, it definitely is too perfect. But after she says this, we kind of zoom into Margaret's face, and Margaret is like looking very content at the start, and then as it kind of like stays on her face, her eyes just look like they become kind of dead. It looks like she's looking off in the distance and there's nothing there. And so we kind of sit there for an agonizingly long time on her face, and then like Margaret draws in a quick like gasp breath, and that's it. That's the movie. So clearly this is not a reality end. Like, this is something in her head. But one of the things that is really wonderful about this film, and sometimes I would not like this, but I did like it here, you don't really know what happened. Like, you don't know, was there some sort of like supernatural aspect to David, or was this all in Margaret's head? Did David kill the baby, and then Margaret just thought that the baby was in him, and that's why she ended up cutting him open? Or was there some sort of like sinister, almost supernatural aspect to this? At the end, is Margaret in like an asylum? Is she like in prison? You don't know what happens. You don't know exactly where she is, but clearly she is in her own world at this point. So I think what we're supposed to take is like, everything about this was in Margaret's head. Now, she definitely had an abusive relationship, and she was definitely the victim of a predator who kind of targeted her, but that probably caused something in her to, maybe she had defense mechanisms, maybe something else happened. I'm not good about this stuff, but it seems like she has built up some sort of world because of this. And so I assume that she killed David for what he did, and now she is like broken from reality. And so in her mind, everything is great. She has the baby, her daughter loves her, but probably in reality, it's not that great. But we don't know. You don't really know because you don't get any more information. But that is Resurrection. Look, I thought it was a very well-made film. I love the leads, and I thought it was just a very strange story, which I liked. But it's weird. So this doesn't sound like a film you might like. Maybe skip this one, but if it sounds like it might at all be appealing to you, definitely check it out. So that's Resurrection. It's coming to theaters on July 29, 2022. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.